Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crisis Chat, the Brave and the Bold edition. I'm your co host, Cookie, and with me is the ever present co host, and it says gesture too.
Hi, it's Randy here. If you're a first time viewer, welcome. Please remember to like the video and please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you can be notified next week when we upload our next episode.
It's such a small thing to do, but you know what? It really helps the channel grow. Something we want to do. We want to grow, we want to get bigger. If you're not a first time viewer, if you've been here before, we want to welcome you back. Thankful to have you here. It's always a pleasure.
Please check out our socials. You can find us on Blue Sky and Patreon. Patrons get access to the Post Crisis Chat Book Club.
Yes, that book club is going to be awesome. We will tell you a week ahead of time which issues we will be recording the show for. It's going to give you a chance to comment on those issues. And once we start getting some comments, we're going to start mentioning them on the channel. Start commenting.
Yes, please. Also, please be advised we will be talking about decades old spoilers in the issue we are discussing today. So, before I get into the issue that we're discussing today, we're going to be talking about a Marvel comic instead of a DC comic. And, right? It's our first time ever doing that. And we are doing this as a favor to our local comic book store owner, Cody. He said we should review this issue. He also said he really likes our formats where we long form talk about the issues of the comics that we're reading and talking about on here. So, as a special thank you to Cody, we are doing this episode where we are covering New Mutants Annual number 3. It is written by Chris Claremont, who I am told is a legendary X-Men writer, pencils by Alan Davis, inks by Paul Neary, and a cover by Alan Davis. I wanted to start out by talking about the fact that I am brand new to the New Mutants. I am definitely not as up to date on my 80s X-Men as I probably should be. I'm also not super familiar with 80s era Marvel. What's your experience, Cookie?
I've read a little bit of 80s Marvel. They've got some good runs that I've read. I read John Byrne's like very, very short run on the Incredible Hulk. I think it was like literally 6 issues. I read a lot of Claremont's run on X-Men, I think up until the Dark Phoenix saga. There's a few scattered issues of Spider-Man here and there. I'm more of a 90s kid because that's kind of when I got into them, but I have gone back to read like a little bit here and there. I enjoy Marvel. I mean, I love that we talk about DC because DC, especially right now, DC is the king of comics. They're putting out some killer material. But
Yeah, they are.
I do still love Marvel. Marvel's got some amazing characters that I love. I'm not too familiar with the New Mutants. My brother he had a few of the issues, but he was more into X Factor, was the book that he liked. Going in, I was thinking this was the stuff that he liked, and I realized after I started reading, I was like, no, it's not New Mutants. It was X Factor. So
Ah,
I've
okay.
officially read my first New Mutants book.
Nice. This might be my first New Mutants book too. I think it is. Although I have been reading lately a bit of Claremont's X-Men. I started with Giant Side's X-Men and I've been reading forward since then. And that's from the 70s, I believe, when it started. And I'm actually super impressed with how good the story is from the 70s because I've read some other 70s comic books and they were not that good. And the fact that Chris Claremont wrote this issue actually made me excited to read it.
Yeah, Claremont is a like legendary writer. I feel an understatement. I mean, the guy basically everything that you know about the X-Men to this day came from Claremont. I mean, he wrote that book for so long and he's created so many characters, so many concepts for the X-Men. I mean, if you're like me and you grew up watching the 97 cartoon,
Mm-hmm.
about 90% of what they did in the cartoon came from Claremont.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like,
I'm recognizing that as I'm reading through his Uncanny run. I don't want to, spend too much time talking about Chris Claremont. Everybody knows he's an amazing writer. On the cover, I'm just going to tell you the notes as I went along because not knowing who any of these people are, I kind of had to figure it out as I went. So on the cover, we have a green dude who has Captain America's shirt uniform on, Iron Man's gauntlet, Thor's hammer, and the Thing's leg. I suppose he might also have the Hulk's coloring. I'm really not sure. And I put in my notes, is this a scroll? I think it might be a scroll. The
um,
green. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say I knew instantly who it was. The moment like you sent me what we were gonna read and I saw the cover, I was, oh okay, I know him.
You got one up on me then. And then the Green Man is fighting a Yellow Man in a Fantastic Four outfit with what is maybe Namor's trunks. I wasn't entirely sure. And it looks like they're huge and destroying New York City like there's some kind of kaiju. Foreshadowing? The cover is pretty well drawn, I guess, although I did note that the colors on the cover seem weird. Now that I've finished reading the book and I understand more about these characters, I understand why the colors look like they do, but it was a little off putting to begin with.
Yeah, kind of a weird cover. I feel like the 70s and 80s, you got a lot of weird covers, either stuff that didn't happen in the book or stuff that just kind of they were trying to be flashy to get people's attentions, and sometimes it didn't quite work out. I was a little surprised because I know Alan Davis. I mean, not personally, obviously, but and I'm not a huge fan of Alan Davis. I mean, he's a great artist, just his style doesn't click with me.
Hmm.
I know he can do really good work, and like that cover felt a little like okay, like now that you bring it up, I wonder if it was the coloring, if that's kind of what it was, possibly.
We cut to Xavier's school, where presumably a student is listening to the Bengals song Walk Like an Egyptian. It also mentions the Beastie Boys are next. Hell yeah. Followed by Joan Jett, Lila, not sure who that is, Tina. I put in the notes, I have no clue. I think that might be Tina Turner, possibly. And then also Dazzler. And I thought the Dazzler mention is pretty cool because it's that whole shared universe vibe.
But a lot of times I forget that Dazzler is a musician in Marvel Universe because I just see her as a member of the X-Men half the time, and it's like you kind of forget that she's a musician, and like okay, she would be as big as if there's anybody under the age of 30 or who's not like a teenage girl, she would be like Taylor Swift for back then.
There was even rumors for a hot minute that there was going to be a Dazzler movie with Taylor Swift playing Dazzler, or at least making some kind of cameo appearance in an X-Men movie. I was hoping that was true. I'm a Taylor fan. You can see her over my shoulder here, right there. We are told this person on the page is Douglas Ramsey, aka Cypher. I'm not familiar with him before now. The art on this page is really well done. The anatomy is just phenomenal. This kid looks either incredibly happy or incredibly sadistic. Either way, his face has a lot of expression in it, which is a big thing for me when I'm reading a comic book. I'm looking to those faces to see what they look like and what the expression is. When I'm looking at it, the page looks really technically correct, really precisely drawn, and I think that it almost feels like it doesn't have a lot of heart to it. But maybe that's just me. It feels kind of cold.
I could see that because I know for me, I'm not a fan of artists, and their artwork is perfect. Like I know we've discussed this before with Jim Lee. If you don't like his 80s and 90s stuff because it doesn't look as good as it does today. Where I like his stuff better back then because it wasn't so perfect. David Finch is another one that I'm not a huge fan of because everything is so perfectly drawn.
I'm starting to maybe realize that it's not so much the artwork from back then that I have an issue with. I am starting to realize I think it's more the coloring. I don't like the way that older books are colored because when I see some of the new recolors, I'm like, those look amazing compared to the old colors. Cypher seems to be in control of the Danger Room for the rest of the New Mutants. We also learn the weird yellow guy from the cover is called Warlock. The New Mutants are about to throw down with the Avengers in the Danger Room. Once again, hell yeah, this is awesome. Also, we see the name Ilyana mentioned. I believe her code name is Magic, and she's had a bit of a renaissance
I
lately.
know what a lot of these characters go on to become in later X-Men titles and in the future of the X-Men books, and that's kind of cool seeing them when they were just young, new characters and fresh faces. It's also a little tragic too because I know the fate of some of them, and it's like kind of sad what the creators do with them later on.
Also, regarding Warlock, I can't swear that before I read this comic I've ever seen this character before, but I have been reading a little bit in the Marvel Universe lately, some newer comics, and Warlock is showing up in those newer comics, and I'm like, oh wow, I've never seen this character before, and suddenly he's popping up everywhere. Or maybe I have seen him before and just forgot about him. I'm not sure. It's cool to see what he looks like then and what he looks like now. What he looked like then, it was hard for me to tell exactly what they were going for. Now that I've seen the modern version, I do understand what he looks like better because he just looks freaking weird.
Yeah, I've never understood the character of Warlock. He's one that I want to say I've only known of him through covers and like Who's editions and stuff like that, where they go through all the characters. I don't think I've ever read an issue that had Warlock in it. This was a new experience.
On the next page, we learn that Magneto is teaching at Xavier's school. I know Magneto tends to be an on again, off again villain for the X Men, and it seems like he was on the heroic bandwagon at this time. To even out the scenario for the New Mutants, Cypher turns the Avengers into their teen version. I recognize Thor, She Hulk, Captain America, and yeah, that's it. I'm not sure who the rest of the Avengers are. Whoever that is on the right hand side looks like somebody out of a fourth world Kirby comic from the Distinguished Competition. I later learned that that is Black Knight, so people know who I'm talking about. But man, that looks very Kirby esque to me.
I don't remember who created Black Knight. It might have been Kirby, but I'm not 100% sure. If anyone knows, like drop it in the comments because I'm kind of curious now to find out who was the creator of Black Knight. I thought it was funny when the Avengers show up. Oh man, we're so screwed, and I'm thinking, dude, this is not even your top tier list of Avengers. You named the ones that were the Avengers, and then it's oh yeah, and then there's three fill-in people that are just kind of tagging along. And I feel bad not for Doctor Druid because I still to this day do not know who the hell Doctor Druid is. Black Knight, I've never ever really cared about. I just felt like he was one of those characters that's like he's there for a cool costume effect, and that's about it. Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, I think later becomes Photon. I actually do like her. I think she's a cool character. The movies have helped me like her a little bit more. She was always interesting, but she
Hmm.
got sidetracked into this era of Avengers that it was not their best team.
The other thing I want to talk about at the top of page 3 here is we've got a shot of the galaxy at the top of the page. And I'll be honest, I didn't catch that that shot of the galaxy was up there when I was originally reading through this. I didn't note the celestial events happening on the top of the page until page 4. That's why I'll start talking about it at the top of page 4. We're getting these celestial shots, and they are going to get repeated as we go along. We'll talk about them more as we go along. So, we're getting some of the names for these other Avengers. The glowing one is apparently Captain Marvel. I don't know this Captain Marvel. And then the fourth world looking character is Black Knight, that I mentioned just a moment ago. Magic tickles the Black Knight to the point where he crashes his craft.
I love the way that the New Mutants are just handing the Avengers their butt,
Yeah.
and it's Magic really stood out as a probably my favorite character in this. I came out of this book really loving her even more, and I've always been kind of like interested in her. Now I'm like, I want more Magic. She's just a really cool character.
My familiarity with her is kind of limited in this new Ultimate Universe that started in 2024. Her and her brother Peter are in charge of the Russian Federation or the Russian Union, whatever it was called, in the Ultimate Universe. And honestly, she's kind of there just a little bit. She's evil in that book, but that's about my only familiarity with her. I see people talk about her on Reddit a lot, but yeah, so that's about what I know about her myself.
Two things I recommend people read for Magic that just because I've read them was Jeff Lemire did a run on X Men that was really good. I think it was Extraordinary X Men, and she was a part of the team, and the X Mansion was in her Hell dimension. And then they did a Christmas issue with her and Colossus. That was like one of my favorite comic book issues of all time.
Hmm.
I really recommend that one. It's a great story.
And I'm also recalling that having recently read Claremont's Uncanny X Men run from the beginning, when Professor X recruited Colossus to come onto the team, Colossus's little sister was in like two of the panels as just like a toddler sized kid with blonde hair. Maybe I do have slightly more experience with her than I remember. But at some point, I know after Colossus gets recruited, she's going to get sent to hell or limbo or something like that, where she's going to be tortured for years. Apparently, this is after she came back. I'm done trying to talk about Marvel continuity that I just don't know. At the top of page 5, we get the Earth and the Moon in the shot. Something is definitely counting down as it approaches Earth. She Hulk and some new mutant I don't know are fighting each other. Oh, it says the character's name is Sunspot. Since this is a New Mutants book, the New Mutants win the fight, surprisingly, against She Hulk with some random assault. Weren't the 80s so much fun? As we move on to the next page, whatever is headed towards Earth is headed towards North America. Captain is fighting some girl who looks like a wolf, and then Cannonball comes in and knocks Cap over, but then gets overpowered himself by Captain Marvel. Good action scene, nice art, I guess.
It's a decent fight. I kind of thought the dialogue was a little cheesy. I think most 80s dialogue is kind of cheesy. I wasn't expecting anything like amazing out of this. I was just expecting a fun book, which it did deliver on that.
Yeah. On the next page, we get whatever is coming is now over New York City and New Jersey. And then we switch to Cannonball, who was knocked over by Captain Marvel and gets caught by Thor. Apparently, the Danger Room safety protocols are on. Then some monster looking creature comes out of nowhere. No doubt one of the New Mutants has a shapeshift or illusion ability, was my thought.
They mentioned who it was earlier in the book. When they did this, I was like, "Oh, okay, now we get to see who it is.
Ah, I missed it. Who was it? Who did that?
It's Mirage, Daniel Moonstar, I think.
Whatever is approaching seems to be zeroing in. I'm guessing it's probably on Xavier's mansion, but it is hard to tell exactly from this particular image. We find out the new mutants can get inside the heads of their enemies and cause illusions to occur. Looks like I was right about that. Sunspot knocks Thor into Captain America, which I feel like probably wouldn't happen with the real Avengers, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an Avengers expert.
Thor alone would probably wipe the floor with the New Mutants.
Whatever it is that is counting down is over Xavier's mansion and covering half the mansion, as well as the surrounding grounds in shade. The last Avenger on the team gets knocked out. Apparently, this is Dr. Druid. What an interesting name for an Avenger. We find out that Dr. Druid has been manipulating the minds of the New Mutants so their ally would appear an enemy. Warlock, however, was able to ignore the illusion. And I think at this point I've determined Warlock's some kind of robot or something. I don't know.
That's kind of what I always took. I don't know what his origins are or anything. I'm so unfamiliar with him. It just kind of came off like comic relief, like Deadpool before Deadpool kind of thing.
Hmm.
I like almost expected him to break the fourth wall several times. I want to ask though real quick because before we move on, am I the only one that was bothered by the fact that all of the Avengers go younger and yet Doctor Druid still stays bald?
I did not notice that, but yes, he definitely, even though he's younger, still has the male pattern baldness going on. On the next page, we get an earthquake. Cypher says he is not the cause. The new mutants head to the front of the school where they see something that apparently shocks them. That very next page is a gorgeous splash page. It's a giant spaceship. It is so well drawn. The details are so intricate. I I have no idea what's going on with this spaceship and why all those different things are jutting off of it. And I don't care. It looks amazing. And then we see an incredibly fabulous looking alien land looking for the X-Men and realizing that the new mutants are not the X-Men. The alien wonders where their friends, the X-Men, are. Magic says that this fabulous alien is the Impossible Man. The Impossible Man tries to flirt with Magic, and Magic says last time he was here, he kidnapped the entire mansion. I kind of want to see that. Where's my editor's note telling me where to find that? Seriously, I want to know. If you know, say something down in the comments.
Possible Man is an interesting character. I've only really read one story with him, and it was a what if story, and it's a fun, amazingly fun story. I highly recommend you read it. It was what if the Impossible Man got the Infinity Gauntlet, and it is just this whole.
Yeah, okay,
It is
that sounds
awesome and
interesting.
hilarious. It is such a fun book.
Then the Impossible Man says he only borrowed the mansion for a scavenger hunt. The Impossible Man mentions he can imitate people such as Nick Fury, the Black Queen, and yes, the Impossible Man looks amazing in the Black Queen's costume. Iron Man, Beast Boy. Wait, no, I mean Zabu, the saber-toothed tiger. No clue who that one
Yes,
is.
that's Kazar's saber-toothed tiger from the Savage Land. Kazar,
Oh,
I don't know if you, yeah, because I usually know Kazar.
interesting. And I just noticed, is he when he's Iron Man? Is he clutching the Hulk's pants?
Yep. He mentions he has the Hulk's
Oh
pants
yeah,
because
yeah,
he's
yeah.
mentioning
There
all the
it is.
trophies.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just didn't make a note of it when I read it before. And then next we get a little fourth wall breaking to mention that Stan Lee is moving to Hollywood. Stan used to write The Impossible Man. The Impossible Man challenges the New Mutants, but they try to nope out of it. However, that doesn't work when the Impossible Man taunts them. For the shortcut's sake, I'm just going to call him Tim from now on. Then Warlock gets in a shape shifting contest with Tim. And, at this point, you can see where the book is really going to take
Oh
off.
yeah. It becomes so much fun at this point. It's just so like crazy.
Yeah, and we see that both Tim and Warlock look like a pile of smoking dust. The other New Mutants are unsure of where they went. Magic teleports the team to Limbo so they can get a scrying pool and see what is going on. So I knew that Magic had been stuck in Limbo for a while, but I didn't realize she could go back. But apparently that's a thing.
That made it so much cooler. I did not know that either. In fact, it was the limbo thing itself. I wasn't 100% sure on what it was because in the X-Men run that I read, they made it seem like they were stuck in hell and it was Magic's fault. I wasn't sure what was going on. Now knowing it's like, okay, wait, she's got her own dimension. She's got limbo she can jump into and out of. That makes her so much cooler.
Hmm. And the next we're in New York City, I think, where a purple Hulk is fighting a yellow The Thing. I am super confused. Wait, is that Warlock and Tim from the previous pages? They're in New York now. I don't quite know how they got there.
That part confused me. Like I knew it was them because I know the shape shifting powers. So it's like, oh, okay, that's where we're going to go. Is they're going to be jumping around from place to place, shape shifting, fighting each other. We're going to see probably a lot of wacky cameos, which is going to be a lot of fun. But the teleportation thing, I was like, I don't know. As far as I knew, Impossible Man was just a shapeshifter, but it
Hmm.
sounds like he's got maybe more powers than that.
With a name like the Impossible Man, I feel like more than that implies more powers than just shapeshifting, in my opinion. I don't know. I First time I've ever seen him before. But then at the bottom of the page, we see a superhero team in some incredibly 80s costumes. I made in my notes, I have no clue who these people are. I don't think they're the new X Men. Turns out I was wrong about that, but just I thought they were going to be in uniform, like in every other X Men book I've ever read. And then no, they're in these, as I mentioned, incredibly 80s costumes.
They're not even 80s costumes. They're bad 80s costumes.
The next page, one of the heroes turns into a wolf, and another of the heroes tells the cops to F off. They won't be of help here. Nice job, kid.
I was going to say, I love the way that he said that too.
It's at this point when I was realizing that, wait, these are the New Mutants. They just look nothing like they did in their school uniforms. This is actually a little jarring, and I dislike not being able to follow who is who because of this costume change. The whole idea from the 80s that every comic is going to be somebody's first comic, especially with an annual. It's a one off, one shot comic, and you switch things up in the middle, and it's really hard to follow. One of the few turnoffs in the story that I found.
Even knowing the characters a little bit, like I would have figured it out once they showed up. I was like, oh, okay, this is obviously the New Mutants. I don't know entirely who everybody is. Maybe like I probably have to really look at it. I would be able to figure it out. But they did mention before that they were going to switch into their costumes. So when they showed up, okay, this is obviously the New Mutants.
I must have missed that dialogue. Two fighting creatures end up breaking aboard on the pier, but I think it's magic because I wasn't sure at the time. Starts to fall through. gets rescued by one of the other heroes. The two creatures continue to destroy the pier. They apparently fell in the river. The mutants debate on what to do next. They determine that the two combatants have teleported yet again. The heroes teleport south and east of where they were. My guess was originally Florida, but no, it's not. It's Brazil. The 80s heroes determined that their costumes could cause alarm. They decide that they need disguises. Someone goes to get those for the group. The kids make their way down the beach to where a strong man is showing off his muscles. A couple of girls in the New Mutants are super impressed with this guy.
We always talk about the sexism of when they objectify the women in comics, but let's point out how the women are objectifying the men here.
That man is clearly volunteered to be objectified. He is wearing a Speedo on the beach and literally flexing. We find out that this is Tim and Warlock competing against each other for who will look the strongest and the most handsome. The leader of the New Mutants feels like the situation is getting out of hand when people start throwing their clothes at the two handsome men. He rockets off the ground, grabs Tim and Warlock, and dumps them in the ocean. Neither of them is happy about getting dumped in the ocean. And we see that their skin is starting to melt off. They had apparently. How did they make themselves look human?
That was like a spray tan or something.
Okay. Probably kind of like what's his name was using in the Swamp Thing, the Floronic
Yep.
Man. Yeah. Apparently, there's a lot of skin tone spray paint going around the comic book universes.
The amount of freakishly alien looking creatures, there's probably a market for that.
That's 100% valid because there are aliens all over both of these universes. So Tim
Uh
and
huh.
Warlock find themselves on the wrong side of an angry crowd of women who are calling the two of them fakes. Tim and Warlock teleport away, followed closely by the New Mutants.
I want to point out real quick, out of all the things that have creeped me out or that could creep me out in this issue, because there's a couple things that could come off a little creepy. Like Impossible Man hitting on Magic was like, okay, dude, that's an underage girl. The one that creeped me out the most was the fact that they had to make it a point for the artist to draw it and for Claremont to write it, for Sunspot to mention how uncomfortably tight his Speedo was. Like, dude, we don't need to know that you're being snuggled to death down there, okay?
That's valid. Next, we're in London, where Tim and Warlock get into a tennis match. I especially enjoy the commentary from the audience. Who's winning? The funny looking one. Oh. Like I literally laughed out loud at that one. Because they're both the funny looking one.
I laughed. I thought that was really good. This issue actually made me chuckle quite a bit.
So then the New Mutants teleport in and start getting whacked with tennis balls. The New Mutants try to convince Tim and Warlock to knock it off as we see the police approaching. Tim and Warlock, nope, out of there yet again. The New Mutants also leave, some going to Limbo and others launching themselves into the sky. Seems a little weird to split up at this point,
Yeah, as you know very well, you never split the party.
right? The New Mutants get back together on Denmark Street as those who launch themselves into the air land on a car. I want to know who's going to pay for that.
Honest, I would assume it would be Xavier would have the money to cover it. Well, I mean, I guess now it'd be Magneto. Now that Magneto's the leader, he could just magnetize it back to normal. You just have to replace the glass.
Totally valid. I also make a note that that was actually Warlock that landed on the car, and Tim comes out of a nearby shop, breaking the window of the shop, looking like Captain America. A guy wearing an I Heart Kirby t-shirt, nice touch by the way, complains that his car and shop are broken. Tim and Warlock note that they are both shape shifted as heroes. I believe Warlock is Captain Britain, and they yell at the New Mutants to leave them alone and proceed to put them in a cage of bicycles and signs.
That's the ridiculousness of this. Fun little trivia fact, though, is the Captain Britain thing was a nice nod because Alan Dace worked a lot with Captain Britain. I think he did like the
Hmm.
first couple of the beginning of Excalibur. He also, I thought I'm almost 100% positive He was the artist on Alan Moore's famous run on Captain Britain in the Marvel UK books.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
So that is a nice bit of trivia. I didn't know that. Tim and Warlock start to have a discussion about what forms they should take to battle each other. We get an appearance of Rambo and Rocky facing each other during the discussion. Then we get Mr. T knocking out Rocky because Tim decides he's the villain. There's a rather funny line where Warlock complains about how the supervillain sucker punched him, and Tim rightly points out he is the bad guy. That's how it's supposed to work. Next, we get a Hydra agent and Nick Fury fighting each other. I want to say, out of all the cameos in here, I think the Rocky Rambo cameo is my favorite of the bunch. They're all great, but I think that was my favorite.
That was my second favorite. My first favorite's obviously coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
I really did enjoy that scene of Rocky versus Rambo. I mean, I think that's a dream fight everyone wants.
Exactly. The New Mutants are trying to catch up, but whoever it is that's trying to catch up gets knocked back into Mr. I Heart Kirby's car. I Heart Kirby is getting pissed now. The New Mutants are telling the crowd this is not their fault. We find out that the I Heart Kirby guy runs a comic shop. He mentions that his car is a Ferrari. So I am calling BS on this one. I know comic book shop owners. I've known several of them over my life. Not a single one of them could ever afford a new car, let alone a Ferrari.
Even at this point, I don't even think comic creators can afford a Ferrari. So
The fight stops when Tim refuses to fight Spider Woman and says Warlock will have to change into someone else. The New Mutants pile on, thinking that they have them, but the New Mutants do not, in fact, have them. And next, we are off to Soviet Russia in 1987, at the tail end of the Cold War, when things were still incredibly uncertain. And on top of everything else, they teleport right into the middle of a Red Army parade in the middle of Moscow. This is hilarious.
I don't know if they did this on purpose or not. They had to have planned it, but it's like at least two of the spots that I know of, maybe three, because I don't know who on the team is British, but with the Puerto Rico, Rio de Janeiro, whatever that was, I believe that's where Sunspot's from. And then Russia, obviously, Ilyana. So it's like they're kind of
Oh,
teleporting to towns or home countries of these people.
that's a good call. I think you're right about that. Next, we have Hobgoblin, or is it Green Goblin? I can never keep them straight. Either way, we have a goblin fighting Spider Man. The text says it's Green Goblin with slightly less violent pumpkin bombs. Despite that, the KGB is freaking out. We get Vladimir Putin on a walkie talkie calling for backup. Magic is mad because they are using her homeland for a battlefield. She teleports Warlock out of the situation. Next, in Limbo, Magic is yelling at Warlock for all the trouble he caused. Back on Earth, Tim turns into Marvel's version of Darkseid. Wait, Thanos, right? That's his name? And picks up
Yes,
one of the New Mutants, mad at him that he took away his friend Warlock. So that is Thanos then?
that is Thanos. Yes.
Okay. In my head, he's Marvel Darkseid.
I feel like a lot of people really they love to compare Thanos to Darkseid. Kind of feel like there is a difference because Darkseid's a god and Thanos isn't really a god. He's more like a powerful alien. In fact, I think he's an eternal, which they're not gods. They were perceived as gods, but they're not actual gods. It is a subtle difference.
No doubt. I have read. Was it Starlin that created Thanos?
I think so because I think he was created in. No, actually, I don't know because I think Thanos actually debuted in Iron Man. It was Starlin that kind of got like turned Thanos into what he became.
Okay.
But I think Thanos was actually originally an Iron Man villain.
Well, I do know that I was watching a video or I read something recently that Thanos was directly inspired by Darkseid. They may have different levels of, I don't know, power or their roles in the universe, but Darkseid was definitely, I'm sorry, Thanos was definitely inspired by Darkseid. And what gets even funnier though is Mongol in the DC universe was inspired by Thanos because apparently you got to have an inspiration and then an inspiration of an inspiration.
Get that a lot in comics. Usually it happens. Image is famous for doing that, doing rip-offs of characters that were inspired by other characters. So it's like you get, and it's like you can tell with Image, like it diminishes in quality. It goes from, like I can't even think off the top of my head. Like I think they did some rip-offs of Deathstroke, Deadpool. I know they did a rip-off of Lobo. Obviously 90% of these come from Liefeld's company.
Of course. I was reading an issue of Wildcats not too long ago, and there is a scene where the Wildcats are on a boat on a cruise or something like that, and in the background you can clearly see Scott Summers and Jean Grey.
They used to have when they would do that stuff a lot, or when they would call out. Each company would call each other out. Like there's an issue of the Incredible Hulk because Peter David and Eric Larson had this bitter feud with each other. And
Really?
so there was an issue where the Hulk, oh yeah, I forget why they hated each other, but they hated each other. And David did an issue of the Hulk where Hulk was trying to go into disguise. So he puts this fin on top of his head. I forget, it might have been Betty that was with him that was saying something about it. And Hulk's response was, no, everyone's just going to look at me and say, this is the Incredible Hulk with a fin on his head. Honestly, taking a backhanded swipe at Savage Dragon.
That's kind of awesome. Next, we have helicopters, Russian, I think, start firing missiles at Tim in Thanos form. Tim transforms the rotor blades into parachutes. Tim tells the New Mutants to bring back Warlock or else he will turn the Earth into green cheese. So, a couple of things about this. Number one, this guy is not malicious. Tim, the Impossible Man, I dig the fact that he is actively not trying to harm people. Breaking through a comic book store window, okay, yeah, he did that. But he doesn't want anybody to actually die. On top of that, his threats, like, how can I threaten the New Mutants so that they will do what I want? I know, green cheese, like their moon.
He's such a fun villain. I think that was so refreshing, especially coming off of what we've been reading lately with Swamp Thing and how dark and bleak and the villains in that are. I mean, they're terrible, but they're villains. And
Yeah,
then you got the go to Marvel, and we get the Impossible Man, who's just like a silly, wacky, fun villain who's not going to kill anybody. He's just there to have some fun.
yeah. I don't even know if I'd call him a villain.
Especially, it's like his motivation is basically, from what I got from the beginning of the book, was he just wants to have some fun. And this is his way of having fun is fighting the New Mutants.
Next, Warlock comes back as a hero I don't recognize. Do you know who that is, Cookie?
I believe that is Captain Marvel.
I thought we had already had Captain Marvel.
This is going to be the fun part. Continuity time, people. There have been multiple Captain Marvels within the Marvel universe. One of the original one, I think he's either the first or second. That part I don't know, but he is Captain Marvel. He's a Kree warrior, and he has the Negabands, which I believe was how he got his powers and such. That
He
was
does look like he's
before.
wearing some kind of band on his own.
Yeah, there was a Negabands because I believe it went Marvell, Carol Danvers, and then Monica Rambeau, and then of course Carol Danvers comes back later, becomes Captain Marvel again. Though I think there was even a couple in between there, but that's Marvell.
This is my confused look, but I'll take your word for it.
I do know Marvel pretty well.
You know what? DC has had like 12 different people as Batman, so I can't really complain too much. Magic brought Warlock back from Limbo, which makes me wonder why they didn't just let the fight go on in Limbo. Maybe there's some restriction there that I'm not familiar with Magic's powers or with what happens in Limbo. I'm not sure. Let us know in the comments
Um,
if you happen to know about that. Oh, you know something, Cookie?
no, I was going to bring up the same point. I was confused because I could have swore the plan was originally they were going to bring them both to Limbo to contain the damage being done. So I thought the same thing. Is like, why did you just take Warlock?
Right? The fighters disappear again while the New Mutants explain that the Russians wouldn't understand as the New Mutants teleport out again. Just like, you guys won't get it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. We out.
This book was just too much fun.
Next, we're in Tokyo, where Galactus and the Watcher are facing each other down. We get a cameo. Princess Di and her husband, Charles, I think his name is. The two combatants argue over who has the better idea of shape, Galactus or the Watcher, while they watch the tiny people below shouting and running away. Wait, we're in Tokyo. That can only mean one thing. Yes, it's Godzilla! Godzilla shows up on the scene. Bonus points for Galactus crashing into an "It's a been ruined" demolition sign on the building. Did
I
you catch
love
the
gags
sign?
like that. I didn't catch it, but I need to go back and look at it now because I love those kinds of gags. Those are so much fun.
Next, Warlock changes into a robot! And to maybe win the fight, he is no longer just a yellow robot. He changes into a color Warlock. He's apparently been able to do this the whole time, which makes me wonder why he spray painted himself into a human. But, whatever. Maybe he just didn't think of it.
I have no idea. The cool thing about the Godzilla and the robot are, well, one, the robot is Red Ronin, who is a character that popped up in the Godzilla comic for Marvel. I think he was also in Shogun Warriors. And I think he had his own series.
That explains a
And
lot, actually.
Red Ronin and Godzilla actually fought each other at least once or twice in the Godzilla Marvel comic. And the I believe this was after Marvel lost the license for Godzilla publishing the Godzilla book. So it was kind of cool to see, like, at that point, Godzilla comes back to the Marvel universe.
He is not Godzilla. He is a generic dinosaur looking monster because Marvel doesn't have the license.
He's Godzilla. We all know that it's Godzilla. It's dollar store Godzilla, but it's Godzilla.
On the next page, we see that Tim realizes he has been beat. The leader of the New Mutants tells Tim and Warlock that they have to make up. We find out that they put everything they broke back the way it was supposed to be. So, Mr. Comic Book Shop Owner's Ferrari is okay. That's good to know.
$10 says that dude stole it.
Next, we see Magneto return from his trip and check in with the New Mutants. The New Mutants don't mention what happened while he was on his trip, but at the last minute, Magneto sees them on the television at Wimbledon. We end the comic with Magneto shouting at the New Mutants.
I love that ending. It makes it feel like this book. I want to go back and read New Mutants. Like, were they all this fun? Because they made even Magneto seem like a fun character to have in
Yeah,
the comic.
I agree. Well, I've always been a fan of Magneto in the comics when I've read him. He's always struck me as a really good character. Really, he's usually really well written.
He's a great character. To me, he's one of the best villains because he's one of the most justified villains of, like, everything he does and says actually kind of makes logical sense of, you can't hate him too much because he's fighting against genocide for his people.
And
So,
he
like,
was right.
you know,
Magneto was right.
for the most part, he's right.
I'm gonna get me that T-shirt that says Magneto was right. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started this, but it was so good. All the 80s references were fun. The humor of the overall story was great. The art on this book was incredibly consistent. I did really like all the expressions on the faces. I thought they were great. I think this book is actually going to have a negative effect on me when we go back to reading Swamp Thing because of how inconsistent the art on that book is. Although I did note with Swamp Thing, we've got a run coming up where Bissett is off the book and Vetch is on the book. All of these books were coming out roughly around the same time as each other, and there's no reason Swamp Thing couldn't have had this kind of consistent art.
There is a problem with your logic on that. As far as consistency within the book, I understand. I agree. I think that a lot of the problem is that Bissett is rushed. I think he's a better artist when he takes his time. We see a lot of artists today that are like that. You see a lot of fill-in artists in all of these books because they can only, like, work for like 3 or 4 issues before they got to take a break. It seems like, and I believe Alan Davis was one of those guys that he was a great artist, but he could not do a monthly book because I believe there was
Hmm.
fill-in issues on Excalibur and some other stuff that he did.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, apparently they give him enough time to do this annual, all what 40 pages of it. So, you know what? He did good. I like it. So, overall, I'm going to give this book a score of 4.5 out of 5 Marvel's version of Darkseid. What about you?
I'm gonna go with actually the same score. The only thing keeping it from being a 5 to me, the dialogue was a bit hokey, especially in the beginning, and that's just like a product of '80s books. It gets a huge negative mark for those god awful costumes that the New Mutants had to wear. I mean, that just sucked the energy out of it for me at one point. And then, of course, like I said, Alan Davis is a great artist, but I have a hard time connecting to his art emotionally. Other than that, it's like this was an all around just fun book to read, and I'm glad we did this because it was nice to have a break from the darkness of Alan Moore's mind.
Yeah, thank you, Cody, for that. Seriously, this book was a lot of fun. I'm actually going to go back and read some New Mutants now, see if I can find maybe some of those epic collections. Hopefully, they're not out of print and too expensive to see if I can, get in some more New Mutants because this story is interesting. With reading Claremont's X Men lately, I've been kind of wanting to do almost like an X Men timeline kind of thing where I read issues, X Men, X Force, New X Men, whatever X titles are coming out and try and read them in about the same order. I'm doing that with DC right now in some of the late 80s DC stuff after post crisis. And it is a lot of fun seeing how the books cross over and how they influence each other and things of that nature. The universes in the 80s just feel really cohesive, and I don't think I feel that as much with the current comic book universes.
I think that's why a lot of times I'm not as excited about current comics coming out. And there's some great books, some great titles that I'm kind of getting into. They're fun. You could read it without knowing or reading anything else within the universe. Like I've been trying to read it up on Spider-Man lately, and I want to say that's one of the few Marvel books I'm actually reading. I don't have to read anything else out of Marvel, and it doesn't feel like I'm missing anything. Where back in the '80s and the '90s, you kind of sometimes felt like you were missing out if you weren't getting every single title because there's
A
always
hundred
something
percent.
going on that they would mention.
And
So
really,
I agree. I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
so you're in for a heck of a chore with the X-Men. Once you hit the '90s, you're in for a real challenge because there was so many X titles coming out.
Marvel is actually making that a little easier. Got done reading the X Men Blue and Gold omnibus, which takes the X Men titles, not all of them, but a couple of them. I think it's Objectiveless and Uncanny, and kind of interspaces them. And then towards the end, we get the Executioner song, which has
Mm.
what, 3 or 4 titles happening at the same time. I really like how they interact and interweave with each other. My problem was when reading those books was understanding who X Force was. X Force wasn't in Blue and Gold up until that point. I've actually got the 3 X-Force Omnis that have come out. I just haven't had a chance to read them yet. And that's what's kind of really inspiring me to want to go back to the beginning with the X-Men and Claremont and then kind of read forward from there and see how everything kind of interacts with each other. Because I think that that could be some like epic level storytelling.
It is. X-Men was a soap opera. I mean, there was just so much stuff going on in the X-Men universe that was just like insane, heavily dramatic. The cartoon nailed it perfectly of the melodrama of
Yep.
what the X-Men is. The comic is better because you don't have the overacting voices from the cartoon, making it sound like incredibly Hamlet-like cheesiness.
This episode has gone on long enough at this point. We could sit here and talk all night about how awesome 80s and 90s comics were back in the day, especially X Men. Really getting into the X Men lately.
I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We had a lot of fun doing this. This was
Yes,
like
we
a
did.
blast. We're glad that you guys are here watching this with us and that you're enjoying it. We do this for the love of comics. Obviously, you can hear it in our voices that we love comics so much.
100%. And I know talk about our Patreon a lot, and we talk about, buying books from our Amazon affiliates and things of that nature. You know what? Even if we never get another patron, even if nobody ever clicks the links and buy anything, we're going to keep doing this because we love comics that much. Please join our Patreon where we have our post crisis chat book club for our members. We let our patrons get their say on the book, and we'll read some of those comments on the channel when we record, assuming we ever get any comments. Somebody, please comment.
Actually, another good incentive for people to start doing the Patreon is like, I'm gonna throw it out here now. Hey, you guys start giving us the money, we'll start also throwing out blooper episodes. And a lot of that stuff, I think you're gonna have a blast with. It's not all safe for work. I mean, it's not like, dirty, but it's, yeah, we do curse quite a bit. So, and we go off script on a lot of things. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. And also, hey, don't forget to check the descriptions for the links to our Amazon affiliate page. You can pick up the book. Okay, this is usually where we say you can pick up the book we were reading tonight in various formats, but I don't know where you're going to find this book outside of a
You know
local
what?
comic shop or like digitally.
I will see if I can find an Epic collection that has this book, and maybe if that Epic collection is in print, I'll be able to link to it down below. If not, you know what? You probably want to buy a Swamp Thing comic, right? You can click on the link
Yeah.
down below and buy Swamp Thing.
Yeah, and hey, not just Swamp Thing. I mean, like eventually Swamp Thing is gonna come to an end, and we will be moving on to probably Batman or Superman or something. So it's like, there's gonna be more stuff coming, and you guys are gonna want to own those books. So you probably should check them out.
There's seriously nothing like turning the page of a physical book. Like, I do some reading in digital, and I do like reading in digital, but there's something special about sitting there with the book and actually turning the page. If you do purchase something from our Amazon affiliate links, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and a small portion of that purchase comes back to us. It's a really good way to support the channel if you can do that.
Lastly, we got to give a big shout out to our editor, the Nacho King. Without you, we couldn't do this, buddy. I just stole his line, but I just wanted to throw that out there because, Nacho King, Randy Savage, he's our man.
We heart Nacho King.
Exactly.
Are we sticking with the fruit phrase, or are we going to do something different since it's the New Mutants?
I actually don't know what to do. I guess because it's New Mutants, we should do something. You know what? Since it's a Marvel one, let's go with our exit tonight to just be Excelsior in memory of a great, great man who gave us a lot of pleasure in the industry.
I'm good with that. Excelsior. Rest in peace, Stanley. Have a good night, everybody.